All right, we are live and recording.
Hey, good evening and welcome to the October 25th, 2023 regular hybrid planning commission meeting. I am Mike Murphy, chair. Tonight's hybrid planning commission meeting is being brought to you courtesy of the Zoom platform. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. I want to thank Vice Chair Regeb for chairing last meeting in my absence. It was a tough one to start with, frankly. It was not an easy one. When I had to fill in as vice chair the first time, our meeting lasted an hour and there was nothing to do, really. So I'm sorry to have inflicted that on you.
No worries.
So commissioners, please have your microphones turned on for the roll call. Deputy City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Hughes as requested an absence tonight. Commissioner Battazo?
Here.
Commissioner Boatsman?
Here.
Commissioner Gels?
Here.
Commissioner Rashid?
Here.
Vice Chair Regeb?
Here.
And Chair Murphy.
Here.
Thank you.
So for this meeting, we continue to use Zoom, and I will do my best to recognize you in the order in which your hands are raised. After being recognized, you may then ask your question or make your comments as appropriate. The first item of business tonight is public appearances. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the commission about issues of concern. Deputy City Clerk, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances or that wishes to address the commission?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one individual that is asked to speak, and that's Mr. Will Orndorff. And when you are ready, I will give him access.
Okay. So tonight's agenda will then include remote public appearances via Zoom. Individuals wishing to address the commission may do so in person or by Zoom or telephone, provided that they register with the deputy clerk by 4 p.m. today. When it is your turn to speak, you will be called by name. Remarks are to be addressed to the commission as a whole, not to individual commissioners or staff. Please speak audibly, state your name and city of residence for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. When your time is ended, I will thank you for your comments and move to the next speaker or item of business as the case may be. Deb, can you promote the first speaker?
Most certainly. Just one moment, please. So I have elevated our guest speaker and have requested that they be unmuted. They are at the community center, so it may take just a moment.
Okay.
This is Will. I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Yeah. Hi, my name is Will Orndorff. As Deb said, I'm coming to you from the community center. I've been a Mercer Island resident for over 15 years. I want to thank all of you for volunteering your time and all your hard work. It's greatly appreciated by our community. I'm here to ask each of you for your support with the Mercer Island Country Club's effort to bring its tennis bubble back by voting for our docket request on the November 15th Planning Commission meeting. On May 23rd, 2023, our City Council approved a motion made by the Mayor with a 7-0 vote, directing CPD to prepare a docket request amending our city code to include temporary uses. This would create a path forward for restaurants or preschools needing outdoor tents and the Mercer Island Country Club's seasonal tennis bubble. After consulting with CPD and others, we decided it would be in the best interest of the city and our club's membership to proceed with our own docket request that addresses the City Council's ask for a code amendment broadly allowing temporary uses and a permitting process, similar to our neighboring jurisdictions like Bellevue. We look forward to working closely with CPD, Planning Commission, City staff, and City Council in the months ahead to address this gap in our city code. As you consider the impacts of approving this docket request, here are some relevant details specific to the Mercer Island Country Club's seasonal tennis bubble project. Our residential neighbors are supportive of this project and our club. We will not add any new members above our current cap of 861 families. There will be no increase in traffic. Our club's membership is over 3,200 Mercer Island residents. Our current landscaping screens the tennis bubble with mature trees on 3 sides, and our existing buildings block the 4th side. The seasonal tennis bubble will go on the same 4 courts where it previously existed from 1969 to 1984. Our historic tennis bubble is shown in the 1978 aerial photo hanging in City Hall as you walk to council chambers. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Will. No other appearances, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to regular business. The first item of regular business is to review and consider approving the September 27th meeting minutes. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
So they been moved by Commissioner Razish and seconded by Commissioner or Vice Chair Ragheb. Are there any comments or questions? Carolyn.
Yeah, so I didn't understand what the line was about staff coordinating an offline special meeting to continue with the economic development element. I didn't remember that from our meeting. Could somebody just refresh me on that and then I could know what I'm voting on? Thank you.
Adam, would you like to speak to that?
If I don't have the minutes open in front of me, but I think that was the direction where you were asking us to come up with some dates for possible meetings if we go over a review tonight and need additional time.
So it's just a scheduling thing, I
Mhm.
guess. Okay, thank you very much.
If there are no other questions or comments, Deb, can you please conduct a roll call votes?
Certainly. Commissioner Batazzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman?
Aye.
Commissioner Gels?
Aye.
Commissioner Rashid?
Aye.
Commissioner Rago?
Aye.
And Chair Murphy.
Aye,
Thank you.
I did watch the video.
That's a long video.
Yes, it was. That's how I knew how much fun Animan had. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Our final item of regular business is the comp plan update, economic development elements, 4th draft. Welcome, Adam. Thank you, by the way, for organizing the remaining issues so that they can be dealt with efficiently. I found the memo to be extremely helpful. Hopefully everyone else did too. So with that, Adam, take it away.
Great, thanks. Yeah, hopefully we can keep rolling here this evening. Let me share my screen. I've got a quick couple of slides to guide our discussion tonight. So let's see here. So our purpose tonight is to conclude the initial review of the economic development element with the Planning Commission. As a reminder, this isn't the last step. We won't be adopting this element at this stage. There's a few more stages that I'll go over at the end, but this is kind of the initial review to get a public review draft together so that we can get some comments ahead of the public hearing on the comprehensive plan update overall. As a refresher for some of the public that may be joining us for the first time tonight, the economic development element is a new element of our comprehensive plan that we're drafting during this comprehensive plan update. And it outlines the goals and policies that the city will use to guide its economic development decision-making in the future. And it outlines all of the projects and programs. It provides direction for those projects and programs that the city will undertake in the next 10 years and essentially over a 20-year timeline ultimately. Our process to date, from October to June of this year, the Economic Development Work Group worked on the initial draft of this element. That Economic Development Work Group was composed of 3 city council members and 2 planning commission members. And then on June 28th, the Planning Commission received their first briefing, and that initiated a comment period on that initial draft. And then starting on July 26th, the Planning Commission started working through the comments that came in during that initial comment period. And that brings us up through today, or I guess in September, the Planning Commission continued to work on resolving those comments. And that really gets us to today, where we're looking at the final comments that haven't been resolved through that process. Again, working toward that public review draft. There are 3 categories of topics to resolve tonight. There's the simple amendments, the remaining simple amendments categorized in that comment matrix. We decided at the last meeting, I say we, the Planning Commission decided at the last meeting to hold a decision on those remaining simple amendments until the next meeting, till this meeting here. And so those still need a resolution. And then after that, there are the amendments that were categorized as needing deliberations. These are a little bit more consequential changes or amendments to the plan or the policies in the plan. So we'll take a look at those. We can look at those more or less like individually. And then finally, after we met last time and we created this policy parking lot, I think there's a couple of things that would help to resolve before we move forward. And we'll get to that here in a minute, just to clarify the parking lot there. So first off are the simple amendments, and these are wording changes that would not necessarily significantly change the policy direction within the plan. You'll see in the memo and on the screen here, I've proposed a single motion that could resolve all of these simple amendments if that's the direction you'd like to go. Otherwise, if there's 1 or 2 of these that need to be discussed, we can pull those out and look at those individually. But here I would turn it over to I think we can just kind of work through these as I have them in the slide deck. So if you'd like to discuss the simple amendments here, I'll stop sharing my screen for a moment.
Carolyn.
You're on mute, Carolyn.
All right. I move that we adopt the simple amendments as presented by staff in table 1.
We have a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the table 1 amendments. Any discussion? Carolyn, is that an old hand or a new hand? Or do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would like to speak to the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
It's just very simple. I made the motion because I felt that the simple amendments as worded were clear, would not materially direct the EDE to be anything much different than what the draft says. And so I just don't have any argument with any of those that are presented. Thank you.
Okay. Adam, you had been the second one up, but you withdrew your hand.
Yeah, let me continue taking a second look. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll defer.
Chris,
Yeah, I'm fine with the simple amendments, all of them, but I have another thought about 7.6, and I don't know if the best way to do it. I mean, one is that I think the liaison needs to come out because we don't have a liaison anymore.
right,
And then the other thought I had was actually we take out we have the business owner planning commission, but I don't think it'd be bad to have a business owner on in that group, just more generally. So I had a couple little thoughts about 7.6. I don't feel strongly about them, and if there's a better way to take them, we can. Or I just don't know how to handle procedurally.
okay, well, I think, Adam, Zach,
Mhm. Yeah, just to clarify, so that planning commission business owner piece that's just needs to come out. It was a typo that stayed in the draft. So, and then as we'll go through and review these for consistency, and so that striking the council liaison position would also take it out here.
Okay.
So there isn't procedurally, there isn't another action that needs to be taken here. I don't think there's need for it.
Angie,
Thank you. My only comment is that with goal 7, striking the words "the regulatory" and changing "any unnecessary burden," I notice that I want to reject that one change. So I do want to put that out as a possible point of discussion. And recognize that it doesn't materially shift how the city is going to be implementing this plan. I just recognize that changing it from regulatory, reducing regulatory burden is a pretty specific goal. And oftentimes most of us would like to reduce regulatory burden in most of our areas. When we change it from regulatory to any unnecessary, it becomes a lot more vague and a lot less directive. And for the sake of efficiency, I think keeping that one as it was is probably important. But I'm not necessarily willing to hijack the entire conversation if we're all willing to pass all of these forward.
so, would you like to make an amendment or a friendly amendment to the Carolyn's motion to pass all but goal 7 and visit that?
Yes, I would like to make a friendly amendment to pass
there-
all but goal 7.
Is there a second for that?
I would second, but I have a clarifying question before I second.
Okay,
So when we say goal 7, does that include 7.4 as well as 7.6? Or would we just be talking about 7.4?
I understand, Angie, you want to clarify that, but I understood what you were saying is just that one line item, goal 7.
Just
and
goal 7.
Yeah,
I'm pointing to just goal 7.
Second.
Carolyn, and can't remember who seconded it.
I did.
You did, okay. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I seconded Commissioner Batazzo's.
Right, no, I'm
Oh.
referring to the original motion that Carolyn made,
Commissioner Goals.
right?
Have you called on me, Chair?
Yes, Carolyn, I'm asking you and Chris whether you're will accept that amendment.
Well, I just have to point out that I'm completely unable to follow this discussion because it's not up on the screen. I don't know what we're looking at. Could we get the text of our this table number 1 on the screen so we can know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So that's my first problem. So I'm really not even quite ready to even address the question because I need to see the text. And maybe while he's getting up on the screen, I would ask, when we have a friendly amendment, when we have an amendment to an amendment, don't we need to take a vote on that?
We have to
Michael?
vote on the amendment first, but you have to, I
Yes.
believe you have to accept the friendly amendment.
Oh, well, let me look at the
Accept
text
it, then
first.
I think,
Chair, if I may,
yeah,
we don't vote on friendly amendments.
right,
If we are making an amendment and voting on that amendment, you need to wait until you've voted on the main amendment, and then you can vote on the amendment to the motion. The other option would be the individuals that made the original motion and the second can choose to incorporate those suggested changes into the motion. It really just depends on the body, but we don't vote on friendly amendments. Friendly amendments really is a formal term for I'd like to suggest that we modify the original motion. And if everybody agrees on that, then you can vote on it. If
Right,
you don't
that's-
agree on it, then you proceed with your vote on the original motion. And then somebody can choose to amend the original motion.
right. And that's why I was asking Carolyn and Chris if they would accept that.
Okay, okay. I'm glad we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Yes. No, we are, yeah.
So if I understand the request to change the amendment, we're talking about pulling number 7 out of the table and dealing with that separately. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, Chris?
Well, I'm fine with dealing with it separately. I want to keep the unnecessary in, but if you're talking about pulling it out and talking about it, that's fine. If we're talking
Yeah.
about changing it, then I would be against it. But yeah, you can pull it out.
Yeah, that's all we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay. Adam, you had a comment.
Actually, a quick question on policy number 12.4, parking credits. Could someone please refresh my memory on that? Is that, bottom of
Yeah.
the table?
I can add. So I think that was something I suggested at some point was I think the idea, if you want to add spaces for people to park, one way to do it is build more spaces. Another way might be to work with private property owners to have some spaces made available to public use and do that through some sort of parking credit. But it's the idea of creating parking without building more parking, and just something to think about in terms of the overall context of how we deal with the parking problem.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Victor?
So two things, and I'm happy to take one and then come back if need be. One, I would also like to propose 7.6 be removed for discussion as well. I look at that ad hoc committee and it's incredibly developer heavy. And that's exactly what got us into this problem in the town center in the first place. And I'm not supportive of that. So do you want that as an amendment or how another amendment or?
Yeah, I would treat it right now as a request for a friendly amendment and
Right.
see if there's and Deb, do we need a second for a friendly amendment or not?
No, sir, there's not a second to friendly amendments. At this point, we're just,
Just modifying our motion, I think.
Yeah,
qualifying, that's a very good way to put it. You're qualifying your motion.
So I'm happy to pull out 7.6. I mean, we can talk about it.
Carolyn, you okay with that?
You know, I'm okay with this, but I really wonder why we're not looking at what we're working with on the screen. Is that something I'm doing on my end here, but I can't see what we're talking about? Can we keep it up on the screen like we usually do?
I can pull it back up. I'd taken it down because usually as folks are discussing, it's better to see each other, but I can share the screen.
Well, I will not be able to follow any discussions if I can't read what we're talking about.
All right, here's the table.
Okay, so what is it where we pulled out number 7, goal 7, and Victor wants to remove 7.6 for further discussion, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
You can talk about it separately. That's good.
Any further discussion on the original motion? Or Victor, do you have, is that a new hand or an old hand? Oh, okay.
No, it's actually my hand keeps going down, and I don't know why that is. I had a second question. If it's okay, I'd like to ask Commissioner Gels just for clarification on parking credits in exchange for what?
I remember Adam and I talked about it a little bit. I think some sort of I think B&O tax thing, or I guess people would have to explore it, that but to do something from the city's point of view to make it worthwhile for private property owners to make spaces available. But I guess at this point I see it as a high level suggestion that just opening it up as a possibility. But I don't think I'm quite ready to make the plan yet.
If we're not ready to make the plan, can we pull that as well?
That's up to Carolyn and Chris.
I don't know what number you're talking about.
12.4.
12.4, I think.
12.4.
7.4?
12.4.
12.4.
12.4. Okay, let's scroll down. Can you scroll down, Adam Z, so we can see the whole thing? Thank you. Yeah, I don't mind pulling out that to talk about later. I would really prefer getting a vote taken on what we are going to adopt, and then just pull that out, and then we can talk about it. Sounds
Fine with
good.
me.
Okay, no further discussion. Let's vote on the main motion, which is adopting table 1 minus goal 7, 7.6, and 12.4. Deb, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Just one moment. While I pivot between documents. Okay, Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
Commissioner Gels,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Rego. Thank you.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Let's go back to goal 7 and the question of the modified language there, taking out the regulatory and replacing it with any unnecessary. Angie, you want to speak to that since that was your request?
Yeah, I would actually like to make a motion to reject the edit in the table and keep the goal as written originally.
Second.
Chris?
Yeah, I guess for me, I feel like in the world, there's a sense that regulation is bad, and I like to think that it's not, and that we want to reduce unnecessary regulation, and it could be, any unnecessary regulatory burden. But I don't see that reducing regulation just for the sake of reducing is always a good thing. As we saw where the train crashed or the whatever, I mean, people are like, oh gosh, what happened to all those regulations? So, I don't think it's a big deal. If everybody else wants to go back to the original language, great. But I think it's the right result.
Victor, or Adam, excuse me.
Yeah, I like the going back to the original. I think unnecessary is too subjective, and regulatory burden, I think, encompasses, burden implies that it's on, I think it's a higher standard than unnecessary. So I'm supportive of rejecting the edit.
Carolyn,
Yes, I agree with Chris on this one. I don't consider regulations to be a burden. They're just how we function positively in our communities and our nation to live together and get things done. So reducing the regulatory burden is an assumption that there is that it's a burden at this point. So I'm in favor of speaking that anything unnecessary should be pulled out, and regulations do sometimes have unnecessary baloney in them, and they should be cleaned up. But I prefer the edit.
Victor?
So I've spoken to a number of businesses about what it's like to start a business on Mercer Island, and I'll say that while regulations have a place, obviously, here on Mercer Island, we have a disproportionate amount of regulatory burden that makes it difficult to open a business on Mercer Island. And let's keep in mind that this is an economic development plan that's designed to encourage economic development. I recently talked to the yoga studio that just opened up here. They had a hard time opening up because of the regulatory burden. You talk to someone such as Joe Kennedy at Barrels, where just trying to get some sidewalk seating, he ran into a huge amount of regulatory burden. Talk to any business owner that wants to put a sign up, the regulatory burden is enormous. So I am very, very supportive of this amendment.
Carolyn? You're on mute.
I already spoke, so I think that's
Okay.
sufficient. Thank you.
Angie, did you want to address this again before we vote?
I just want to say that I absolutely acknowledge and agree that there needs to be regulations. Those are important components of applying consistency in policies, and especially if we're going to grow our economy. So I do want to acknowledge the way I read the statement isn't so that we're eliminating burden, but simply reducing. I do think it would be important for the city to actively reduce the regulatory burden, especially when those burdens become so complicated, which I think has been some of the feedback we're getting, that it starts to narrow who's interested in opening a Mercer Island. And what I wouldn't want to see happen is too much regulatory complexity that favors corporations and others who can afford to dodge and weave, and suddenly we have a lot of strip malls with chains because the regulatory burden was too great for small mom and pop shops. So to the extent that we're at least just trying to create language that helps support, it is the regulations that either promote or prevent the variety within the economic environment. And the more complex it gets, the more it favors the big guys. And so I just acknowledge, especially given our business ecosystem, that the specificity around regulatory rather than just unnecessary is important. Yeah, it doesn't say eliminate, and I don't think we should eliminate regulation, but reducing it to favor a variety of potential economic mixes is important.
Carolyn, final comment.
Yeah, I did have something I wanted to add. I just think as we go through this economic development element and all the elements that we go through with this comp plan amendment, we really have to be careful about subjective descriptions of what is too much or not enough regulation. I mean, it's a subjective call by people who are speaking about it.
Okay. the question before us, the motion is to delete the edit and go back to the original text, which reads, the city actively reduces the regulatory burden, etc. So Deb, do you want to call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Boatsman,
Nay.
Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gills. I'm sorry, Commissioner Gills,
Oh, sorry. Nay.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Reagan.
Aye.
That's 4 in support.
Motion passes 4-2. Let's move on to 7.6. Who wants to speak to that?
I'm happy to speak to it. So, and as I stated, so while I'm supportive of the edit, which is the business owner planning commissioner, I believe you do need some sort of business ownership representation on this. You've got 3 builder, developer, industry types here, and a city council local business liaison who is most likely unfamiliar with the intricacies of business. And so I think that takes us to a situation that got us to where our town center is today, which was no business representation, very developer heavy.
So basically, as I understand, Victor, you're saying just drop this whole thing.
Yeah, that would actually be not a bad idea.
Okay, or
create more business representation in your ad hoc committee, whichever one people have more stomach for.
Carolyn.
When I first heard what was Victor was describing, I thought he was talking about leaving the phrase in a business owner and remove the word planning commissioner. I think this would be strengthened by including a business owner and just delete the part about the planning commissioners. Would that help? I like the whole proposal as is. I hate to delete the whole thing, but I'd like to see some business owner representation on it, certainly. How do people feel about that?
Anna.
I'm kind of leaning towards my gut feeling would be scratch all of 7.6. I'd be happy to put forth that motion.
Does that mean you're making that motion, or?
I will make a motion to strike 7.6 in its entirety.
Okay.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to drop 7.6. Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, Chair, I didn't hear a second. Did somebody second that?
Victor?
I did.
Repeat who that is? I'm sorry.
Victor.
Thank you so much. 2 of our commissioners sound very similar, so I need to verify.
Carolyn?
Yeah, I think the concern with this proposal, that it didn't have sufficient business owner representation, is where we started, but now we're talking about, deleting the entire concept, which is a much bigger topic. I think it is a good idea to look at adaptive reuse of commercial real estate, and that is a complicated topic. And I think it's really a good idea to have this kind of discussion going on and some participants identified, including a business representative, and leave this in. It's not harmful, and it could be helpful. So they whatever they come up with has to be submitted through the docket process. So if it's not found favorable by the planning commission or city council, it doesn't go anywhere. But I think the discussions are really important to have, and this group should be retained.
Angie?
If I'm interpreting 7.6 to support the overall goal of number 7, and if we just accepted that the goal is to reduce the regulatory burden, one of the things that it looks like to me is that 7.6 very specifically tells the city how to do that related to commercial reuse by convening an ad hoc committee. Now, I absolutely agree with Commissioner Boatsman and probably others that it needs to be a very active conversation to include a variety of opinions and perspectives. But I believe that the city is capable of coming up with a number of different possibilities and opportunities without necessarily having us try and direct it very specifically through this particular avenue. I agree it should be debated. I agree there needs to be a variety or a balance of people there. And I think the city is probably capable, city staff are probably capable of putting together a committee without having it articulated here specifically. So I am in support of the amendment to eliminate it.
Adam?
I think we're over specifying this. I think I'm looking at our, the let's talk list of docket proposals. I mean, I see one there already from a developer, if I'm interpreting it correctly. So this is kind of, there's already a pathway for a developer to bring forth some a docket submission. So this is just, this committee is duplicative. So yeah, that's kind of my thinking on why I'll support removing 7.6.
Yeah, I have one comment on it. I think it's an attempt to institutionalize a process to deal with a specific type of issue. And whether that requires something in the comp plan or not, or we rely on the city staff and docket proposals to bring that forward, is really the question. Do we want to institutionalize that in this way, in this specific way? Any other thoughts? Okay, well, there's a motion to drop 7.6. Should we take a roll call?
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Gales,
Aye.
Vice Chair Reagan,
I
Commissioner Patazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Rashiz.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. On to 12.4.
Chair, if I could, there's another issue needing deliberation on 12.4, and I've got that in my slide deck, so we can do it kind of all at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That probably makes more sense.
Yeah, let me get that slide deck pulled up here. All right, so well, we've already got this process down now for further deliberations. So the first policy marked out for further deliberations is policy 7.1 F. It was a proposal to add reducing greenhouse gas emissions to this list of things to address with an audit of the commercial development code.
Angie,
I want to make a motion to accept the edit proposed in 7.1F.
Second.
okay, motion has been made and seconded. Do you want to speak to the motion, Andy, before I have others weigh in?
I think it speaks for itself, other than it's simply adding language to tie this particular element to greenhouse gas emissions, and at least evaluating.
Carolyn?
I'd just like to ask, I didn't understand what we did with 12.4 under table 1.
We're going to review it at when we get to 12.4 in this group.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the amendment or the proposal that has been tabled? Deb, you want to do a roll call vote here?
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Riggin,
Nay.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Gales,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis,
Nay.
and Commissioner Batazzo.
Aye.
The vote passes 4-2.
All right, the next change is to policy 7.3, or the next proposed change. And it is essentially pulling in the climate action plan project manager into the group that will develop annual docket recommendations as needed.
Carolyn?
I move that we adopt this change.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Carolyn, you want to speak to your motion?
Sure. Process and code improvements, which is what this paragraph is about, will take input from many city staff, depending on the nature of the proposal. Transportation staff regarding bicycle and pedestrian plans, parking, arts and culture, people with those responsibilities, utilities. So I don't really think that it makes sense to just make a special mention of the climate action project manager when there's going to be many, many staff coming in about many different things. I don't think we should try to list them.
So I think there's a little bit of confusion. I thought you were proposing to accept the edit that would.
Oh, well, let me see if I've made a mistake here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, just let me read this for a moment here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, see. Okay, I'm sorry. I withdraw my motion.
Okay, do we have a motion relating to 7.3?
I'd move for the including the climate action plan project manager and deliberations on the code improvements.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I would make one comment for Adam Zach. This references the council local business liaison too.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be taken out in the editing process.
Yes.
So the motion to approve has been, or a motion to approve this change has been made and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Carolyn, do you now want to readdress your point?
Sure. Yeah, I think you already heard my point. It's
Okay.
just
Okay.
stated in reverse. But am I hearing you say that we need to delete the phrase "and council local business liaison" as well?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
that's
that's been deleted throughout. That position no longer exists.
so we need to amend the motion then, right?
Well, I don't think so, because that's really in the purview of the cleanup edits that Adam will do.
Okay.
I just want to make sure he was aware of that. Victor.
I'll just say +1 to Carolyn's earlier comments. I agree.
Okay. Adam.
Since we have multiple changes, could we just have a read of what the motion is, the text that the motion is covering?
Chair, if
Oh.
this is what I have / propose for clarity, given that this is the document in front of you, is to adopt the amendment to policy number 7.3 and remove quote "and council local business liaison." I think it's important, since this is the document that was included in your agenda packet, that we're clear that even though that's been removed previously.
Yeah, no, sorry. The actual motion that is in front of us that we're talking about is to accept the language, accept the deletion of the word dedicated and the insertion of the climate action plan manager into 7.3. That's the motion that's been made, I'm sorry. The motion that's been made is to include those changes.
Okay, my apologies. I was working off of
Yeah, no,
how we have presented that, or how we've worded this previously, but that's okay.
yeah,
We're
sorry
saying the
about
same
that.
thing, just two different ways.
That's sort of my fault, because I confused you by raising the local business liaison point for Adam Zach. So, but back to the original point of the issue is the motion to accept the changed language. And I think now we can have a roll call vote on that.
Okay, and for my sake as your recorder, I have a motion by Gels, it's seconded by Battazo, to accept the deletion of quote unquote dedicated and accept the insertion quote action plan project manager.
Climate action plan project manager.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To policy number 7.3 and remove quote "and council local business liaison."
You can delete that last part. That'll be dealt with later.
Sorry, Deb, the liaison part is not part of the motion. It's something that I just need to do. It doesn't need to be, it wasn't part of the original motion.
Okay. Okay, if we are comfortable with what I have presented, I'll proceed with the vote. The roll call vote. Commissioner Battazo?
Nay.
Commissioner Gills?
Aye.
Vice Chair Reagan?
Nay.
Commissioner Rashis?
Nay.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Nay.
and Chair Murphy.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Okay, next one, Adam.
All right. So
Can I ask one question, just clarify? Are we leaving dedicated in, I guess?
No, that was,
I think by the motion failing, it is. I think there's can be a new motion that removes it.
Oh, I would like to propose a motion to only remove dedicated. And of course, not add cap project manager to 7.3.
Second.
okay, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Carolyn,
Would you please read the motion then again, please?
the motion is to simply strike the word dedicated from 7.3.
Okay, so climate action project manager is already struck?
Yeah, it's not, no, yes, it was not added. Correct.
Could you just read the whole statement as it's going, that we're voting on here, please?
it would be evaluate additional process or code improvements on an annual basis with input from the economic development staff. And
Very-
this evaluation should inform the development of annual docket recommendations as needed. This council local business liaison piece is done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Carolyn, is that an old hand?
It's an old hand. Yeah.
Okay, let's do the vote.
Just one moment, please, while I catch up with the voting and the motions to ensure that I'm capturing everything correctly. If I could please have somebody restate who made the motion and seconded it.
The motion was made by Adam, by Vice Chair Rageb, and seconded by Commissioner Raziz.
Thank you. Commissioner Boatsman,
Hi.
Vice Chair Ricky,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Gales,
Aye.
Commissioner Regis,
I'm
and Commissioner Boatsman.
Oh, I already voted.
I'm sorry, I Commissioner Batazzo then.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, the next proposed amendment is a new policy under 7.7 that reads study allowing small scale retail outside the existing commercial districts. There's also, so I guess it's worth pointing out that there's also a proposed new 10.5 that addresses the same issue. And so I think we can look at whether or not you want to keep both or only want to keep one. So here's 10.5. That reads, review residential development standards and consider addition of small neighborhood establishments such as cafes and small boutique grocery. So those are both kind of addressing the same thing. Here, I'll go back to 7.7 and we'll turn it over to you.
Not sure whose hand came up first, but Carolyn.
Yeah, this one's a little bit complicated because we're talking about two different proposed policies, but my approach to this would be to move to adopt this one and not adopt the other one. And I have some talking points to that I could go through in a discussion if we were to take that as a motion.
You can make that motion.
Okay, I move that we adopt this proposed policy and not adopt the other one. So I guess what I'm proposing is to have this discussion all at once. If that doesn't work, Chair, I will just move to adopt this policy as is, whichever you will work better for the commission.
Well, let's see if we get a second for adopting this policy.
Okay.
Second,
Okay,
and I understood the motion be, isn't it's the second motion then, that just to adopt this policy and nothing about 10.5, is that your motion, Carolyn?
Yes.
Okay,
Point of clarification, Chair Murphy.
yes.
Commissioner Boatsman's motion is to adopt policy 7.7 and
Correct.
nothing about not adopting something else.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Do we have discussion? Adam?
Yeah, I am strongly opposed to both of these. I mean, first off, people complain about our town center not being walkable, and that's partly caused, my understanding, because of a lack of density within the town center. So you start sprinkling, we don't even have a dense enough for critical mass in our town center. So why would we, if we're trying to develop our town center, why are we starting to sprinkle stuff everywhere else? And then I think even more impactful than that is just even studying adding small scale retail in residential areas. Like, that completely destroys the residential zoning, right? Because you can't have only specific lots have the ability to have these just small scale retail, right? Because that would be a spot zone. So I mean, essentially you're opening the door to retail anywhere in the entire island. So I am absolutely opposed to both of these. These are dangerous policies.
Victor?
If it's possible to be more opposed to this policy than Adam is, then I am. So first and foremost, zoning is the third rail of Mercer Island politics. And as Adam says, the discussion of putting retail in residential is absolutely ludicrous. I'm completely unsupportive of this.
Chris?
I guess I'm not sure if I'm in favor or against. I think there are good arguments both ways. For me, the study idea is a good idea. I think it's something that people have asked for, that it came from public comment, and that the idea of having a yoga studio that's walkable to people. Is there someplace on Island Crest that could have a corner grocer that people could walk to, that you didn't have to be so car dependent? I see some attraction to that, and I think it merits someone to take a look at it. Recognizing there may be some strong arguments against it, and at the end of the day, it might not happen. But I'm not afraid to have it studied.
Carolyn?
I would second what Chris has said. I think studying it is not so frightening. I think we should let a public process decide whether small scale retail, by the way, this is small scale retail, is something that people want, rather than us trying to decide that can't even be discussed. So I do think letting it go forward as a study is letting people give input and letting us consider something quite new. And again, it's very small scale retail it's referring to. And it allows people to, do some easy socializing at a small coffee shop or something in their neighborhoods without getting into their vehicle. So I think it's something to consider. I would like to point out that this proposed policy actually incorporates everything that's in 10.5. but just says it more concisely. So that would be why I would be in favor of this one. But we can talk about that later as we get to 10.5.
Angie?
Yeah, I acknowledge that there's a diversity of perspectives across the island about residential, what we allow in residential and commercial zones. I can certainly hear it in opinion, and across this particular commission, it doesn't sound like anyone's ready to recommend that we change the zoning. But I think that is where studying something so that we have more information when the time comes to review it again is a reasonable, shall I say, compromise. And so I do support studying and exploring ideas further. I don't necessarily support reviewing and considering changes without first studying things. So.
Thank you. Carolyn, did you have another comment, or is that an old hand?
I'm sorry. I'll get that hand down.
Okay. And do you have a new comment, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Is that, go ahead.
I guess I'll say, yeah, I mean, I think even studying it is just opening the door, opening a Pandora's box. And this reminds me of a book I read when I was like in kindergarten or something. If you give a mouse a cookie, they're just going to keep asking. So studying is the beginning of a slippery slope. So I'm strongly opposed.
Well, I'm going to weigh in on this one. I recognize the concerns that Victor and Adam have expressed about there being a lot of vocal and strong opposition to this down the road. But I think the key word here is study. And when you consider that we're going to be required by the state to increase density outside of the immediate core, that this is something that might make sense to be examined and studied hand in hand with that. So I would be in favor of this. So let's do a roll call. Adam, another comment?
May I just add to your comment about the 1110 requiring us to increase density outside of the town center? That's increasing residential density. So this would actually work counter to that, correct?
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. Well, I just thought I'd throw that out there. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deb?
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Gales,
Aye.
Commissioner Riggum,
No.
Commissioner Vitazzo,
Aye.
and Commissioner Rashiz.
Yeah.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay. Adam, Zach.
Yes,
You're up.
so you'll see policy 10.5 is largely similar to 7.7. So I think we've had the discussion on this one. I'll turn it over to you.
Angie.
Did we skip 10.1? Are we just resolving 10.5 first and then going to 10.1?
We're just resolving 10.5 first.
Thank you.
Adam. Vice Chair Raghib, your hand.
Sorry, that was old hand. Old
Okay,
hand. Apologies.
Carolyn.
I move that we delete this. Because
Second.
everything it says, well, I don't need to explain why. I move that we delete this.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion beyond what we've had? Carolyn, did you want to add something? Your hand's still up.
I'm very sorry. I'll try to do better on that. Thank you.
Okay, no discussion to be had. Let's do the roll call.
May I ask who made the second?
It was Commissioner Gills, sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I just,
You know, anyway.
okay. Motion was made by Boatswain, seconded by Gales to delete policy number 10.5. And Commissioner Gills,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Reagan.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, so the next proposed amendment is to strike policy 10.1. Policy 10.1 reads emphasize quality of life as a cornerstone of the Mercer Island economy.
Chris. You're muted.
Yeah. So, I guess for me, I find the quality of life concept, relatively marginally related to the business development side of things. It's my personal view. I also think it's very vague. For some people, quality of life is, big houses and lots of space, and other people want a real diverse, action-filled community. And so I'm not sure it really gives a lot of guidance to what that means. It's sort of the eye of the beholder. And frankly, for me, it has a bit of an exclusionary feel to it that makes me a little uncomfortable. So on balance, I haven't tried to excise it from the entire document. There's a lot of quality of life we talk about, but I'm not sure I want to make it the cornerstone of our economy. So I would strike this.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Victor.
So, I support striking this. I don't know what purpose it serves. I've been on the receiving end of the former comp plan, and I know that all kinds of unintended consequences happen from it, and people latch onto things that probably weren't intended to be latched onto. And so anything extraneous, I'm all for getting rid of. This feels incredibly extraneous. I don't know what purpose it serves.
Carolyn.
This is exceedingly vague, and I don't think it gives anything useful or guidance to our staff or future commissioners or, yeah. Okay.
Any other comments? Deb, you want to do a roll call vote? The motion is to strike the entire policy 10.1.
I have that motion was made by Commissioner Gales and seconded by Commissioner Boatsman.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gales,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Reagan.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. On to 12.4.
We are at 12.4. So here, the deliberation piece of this, as shown in the memo, was just about striking this last sentence, but it's still unresolved whether or not this other insertion, addition to the element or the policy, should be made. So we can have one motion to amend as presented, or if you want to take each piece of those individually, we can do that too. However you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, I think to avoid confusion, let's take each piece separately and let's start with the parking credits. So, Angie?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to reject the addition of that entire set of text through a combination of regulations and incentives like parking credits. Motion to reject that insertion.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to eliminate the entire text insertion starting with through and going through credits, and it's been seconded. Okay, discussion. Chris.
Yeah, as I said, my thought was really just to, raise the possibility of, allowing to respond to the parking need by, creating parking on private property. I don't think it's necessary, and if people feel strongly that it's not a good idea to have it here, I'm not gonna. It's not that big. I don't think it's that big a deal, but it is just sort of a placeholder to, broaden the discussion when people talk about parking and not forget about the, maybe a different approach than typically thought of.
Angie.
I do want to acknowledge Commissioner Gells's intent, and I do think that it's important that we're evaluating, like, what are those regulations, what are those incentives, what are those things we're doing to ensure sufficient parking. So I want to acknowledge, I think it's important for us to look at what are we doing. I'm just not sure that this language in this location is the right location. I will also say that while I'm suggesting we delete this added text, for me, it's going to be really important that we also add back the other one, because it's important not to lead to a reduction in parking unless that. So that's important to me. I went along with this particular breaking up of those things, but it makes sense to delete this text to me as long as I have the opportunity to retain the deleted text later on in the statement.
Carolyn.
I think it's really important to include in the comp plan that we should ensure that sufficient parking is provided, but I think kind of ties the hands of staff and people working on this to try to say how it should be done. So I just believe it should be just left open. And again, good ideas that Chris has brought up here, but better to leave it flexible.
Victor.
Incentives like parking credits are incredibly vague, and I think again can lead to unintended consequences and big giveaways. I'm not supportive, and I support Commissioner Battazzo's comments as well in their entirety.
Yeah, I'm going to make one comment. I do think it's overly prescriptive and implies that those are things that are to be done and to the exclusion of others, and as such, it's not necessary or appropriate. Okay. Deb, should we take a vote? The motion is to delete the entire underlined insertion in 12.4.
And I have that motion was made by Battazzo and seconded by Regum.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Boatsman.
Aye.
Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis.
Aye. We're voting to not include this, correct?
Yes, correct.
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Gels.
Aye.
Commissioner Battazzo.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Regum.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the next issue, the motion passes, that language is deleted. And the next question is the inclusion or exclusion of the language at the end. Interpretation of the policies of this element should not lead to a reduction in parking. Do I have a motion, Carolyn?
Yes, I move that we delete the last sentence as shown.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been moved and seconded. You want to speak to the motion, Carolyn, now that your hands
Yes,
up?
please. Yes, please. There may be a day when less parking is needed. And again, in keeping with what we did to the first part of this draft policy, I don't think we should tie the hands by precluding flexibility to meet future conditions. We've already said that we ensure sufficient parking is provided. So I think we should allow for flexibility in more and less parking as time goes on, as to what is needed.
Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, I think the idea is that let's just, see what we need and make sure we have enough. And I don't understand why we would put this in to dictate one result. And, one thing I read about a lot about is the world of driverless cars, the people are postulating there'll be a lot less parking needed, that they'll open up whole swatches. And, I don't know if that's going to come to pass. I don't know if it's going to come to pass in the next 10 years. But it's a possibility that could, would be looking silly with all these parking places and no cars in them. So, as I say, I don't see what the upside of it is, and I would take it out.
Victor.
So as a business owner who was on the receiving end of a city council and a former mayor who touted the benefits of self-driving cars and all the wonders of self-driving cars as they took away parking spaces in the town center, I am absolutely 100% opposed to this.
Andy.
As someone who doesn't own a car, and so I don't necessarily always struggle with the parking situation. However, as someone who works with a variety of different neighborhoods and businesses, what I've recognized or learned is that predominantly the people who actually need cars and still need to get around to get support tend to be lower and middle income folks with families, and that parking is a critical piece of their ability to frequent businesses. And there are whole neighborhoods that, surprisingly, the waterfront in Seattle is one of those places that without parking accessible, you see a reduction in families being able to use resources like the aquarium or like small businesses. I do think sufficient parking is important until transit is better developed and provides more equitable access. I think we're on our way to that, but we're still in a place where parking is actually an equity issue, shockingly. And it's more an equity issue for the people who really need to use their cars than the people who just get to and want to. So I still want to support making sure that the interpretation of the policies for now don't lead to a reduction until some of these awesome technologies and opportunities that I hope come in our future and help us reduce greenhouse gases are also widely and equitably accessible to most.
Chris.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, and hence the first sentence says we ensure that sufficient parking is provided. And I'm just not quite sure why we need to say more, but I made that point, so I will pipe down.
Yeah, my concern is the point that Chris just made seems to be at odds with the language in the last sentence. That is, you ensure adequate parking or sufficient parking, but yet you say that we can't interpret the policy to reduce parking. So there seems to be a bit of a contradiction there. Number two, I'm not terribly enamored with the idea that we're going to have self-driving cars all that quickly. I share Commissioner Battazzo's comments about accessibility. I view it through a different lens, given that I'm disabled. Parking is a big deal for me personally, and adequate parking is a big deal for me personally. So, I'd love to see more parking, but my concern is that this is a document that is intended to last or govern things for 10 years. And a lot's going to change in 10 years, hopefully for the positive. And so I'm a bit concerned that including this seemingly contradictory language in here, that's going to theoretically bind the city for 10 years may not be the wisest course. And something else might be more appropriate to insert in there. And we can maybe revisit that, but I have a problem with that language that's in there right now. Any more further comments?
Point of clarification,
Yes.
the motion on the table being debated that was made, I believe, by Boatsman is to keep the existing edit, strike the last statement.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. I think that was incorrect. The motion is to keep the last sentence, to not strike it. So,
No, that's
No.
not my motion.
It's not.
My
okay,
motion is to delete the sentence as shown
okay.
on the screen.
Which, to clarify, does not speak to the underlying portion that was already addressed in the previous motion.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Any more discussion? Deb, if you can call the roll.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Nay.
Commissioner Gills,
Aye.
Vice Chair Brigham,
Nay.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Rashid.
Yeah.
Motion fails. It was a split vote.
What's that mean?
I mean, it was 3-3.
Right. I'm just trying
So
to think what it means for the screen. Does it mean that the deletion stays or?
If we move on, it would mean that the original language of the policy would basically stay for that last sentence. So that sentence that begins with interpretation is going to stay in the draft unless an additional action is taken by the body. Okay, so we will move on to there was a proposed policy 12.5 that proposed some language about public plaza or public space and kind of harmonizing that with the pedestrian and bicycle facilities plan. There's a staff proposed alternative to that proposed policy, and staff is not recommending one or the other. It's just the staff proposal is a little bit more concise in our opinion.
Before we move on, Angie, did you have a question or comment?
I was going to make a motion regarding this policy, but
Oh,
if you're
okay,
ready for
okay.
that, then
Okay.
I'd like to
Go
make a
ahead.
motion. Go ahead.
No, Adam, are you done?
I am, yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the staff proposed alternative.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Carolyn, you want to speak to that?
Sure. The reason I think the staff proposed alternative is better is that it refers to all functional plans, not just the pedestrian and bicycle facilities plan, which I think is really important. And it refers to all people to create safe walking and cycling routes. Doesn't try to say for residents, for children, et cetera, create safe walking and cycling routes for everyone. And then it does continue to include connection of residential with public spaces. So I think it's a better statement.
Any other comments? Adam?
I'm supportive of staff's proposed alternative. I think having safe roads, especially given that a lot of them are in some cases narrow, and yeah, I like it.
Okay. Seeing no further hands. Deb, would you like to make the roll call vote?
I have a motion by Commissioner Batazzo, seconded by Boatsman, to accept the staff proposed alternative to policy number 12.5. Survey says. Commissioner Gills,
Aye.
Vice Chair Reagan,
I
Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Right?
and Commissioner Rashiz.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Right. So before we get to the parking lot, when we left off in September at the last meeting, there were two policies that Commissioner Boatsman, Accuse, and Vice Chair Ragheb were going to draft. And those weren't included in the memo because I hadn't gotten the draft yet. So I'm going to share that document and turn it over to them if they want to talk about that in a little more detail. So the first one was policy 4.3. Let me get my screen shared here.
I believe that was 4.2, wasn't it, Adam?
Yeah, 4.2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Thanks. So Carolyn, if you want, or Adam, Ragheb, if you'd like to point out where, sorry, I just got this before the meeting, so I don't know
I'll be
exactly.
glad to summarize, but can you
Sure.
scroll up a little bit further to the top of the
Sure.
document? Thank you. Okay. All right. So may I take it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. So Kate and Adam and I were assigned to work on policies 4.2.d and proposed policies 4.3a and b. And so I'm going to summarize what we discussed and what we concluded were good proposals to put before the commission. Before we got into it in any depth, we discussed and agreed on several principles. Addressing climate change could be good for economic conditions, and that since the cap does not clearly state that, we thought we should say something like that in the EDE. We might consider adding climate-oriented policy to the EDE if we think something is good and the cap neglected to include it. Conversely, we would typically not recommend adding climate-oriented policy to the EDE if the cap adequately addresses it. And we also felt that mentioning to the cap here and there sort of gratuitously in unnecessary ways was probably to be avoided. So those are sort of the guidance that we kind of gave ourselves in moving forward on drafting these policies. Okay, moving along, if you could scroll along there. Thank you, Adam. In the previous draft, Adam Ragheb had suggested deleting policy 4.2D with his comment 41, and I had proposed keeping it, but amending it with my comment number 70. Now, I would like to point out that my comment number 70 was not copied correctly into the draft. So there was a lot of confusion last time. What does this even say? And the reason is because there was about 6 or 7 words that were meant to be struck that were not struck. So of course it was very confusing. Now, if you want to see that mistake, you could take a quick look at the matrix at comment number 70. Could we do that, please, Adam? Could you put comment number 70 up on the screen so we could see what the cause of the confusion was?
Well, I can do that. I don't have it like ready to go. Carolyn, I think it might be better if we just get to the, I think you have a proposed policy here, if maybe you want to.
Okay. Okay, very good. I can do that. So the way it would read in clean copy would be as shown right here. So be guided by relevant strategies in the climate action plan to reduce the potential negative effects of climate change on doing business in the city and to attract businesses, workers, and customers in a warming climate. By the way, we added the word potential negative effects. That was something Adam R. felt he would be more comfortable with. So with that change in what I had drafted previously and correcting up that little mistake that had been made before, this is what we put before you for 4.2.d. Should we keep going or should we? Well, let's consider it all at once and then come back. Could we do that? There's just a few more things to do. What do you think?
Well, we can discuss all of them and then we're gonna tackle them individually.
Sure. Okay. So 4.3, I had proposed a brief amendment and it is shown there. Be consistent with the climate action plan strategies during economic development. So we all agreed on that one. We thought that would be better than just using the word consider because it seemed to lack meaningful direction. Okay, scrolling along, 4.3a. I had proposed enhance city-led street tree planting in the right-of-way and promoting street frontage planning. And this was a replacement and a relocation of something Chris had proposed, which was encourage the planting of trees by businesses in the city's business district. And I proposed that because I thought it was good to define the city and the property owner roles. In the interim, I checked again to see if the CAP sufficiently addresses this topic. And at this point, I would reverse my view because I think it does sufficiently address the tree planting policy. And we thought that the commission should delete both of these proposed policies and then address the trees and related concepts in the policies 4.3, which appear below. Okay, so 4.3b, I had proposed the underlying policy to encourage the establishment of vegetated walkways and rest areas to combat heat island effect. Now, the CAP doesn't say anything like this, which is why I proposed it, yet the proposal is rather vague. So Kate and Adam collaborated on further language, which is presented in 4.3a and b, to foster development of a thriving business community with an attractive urban tree canopy, to develop a strategy to increase tree canopy in the town center that is compatible with redevelopment and infill development. So we wanted to propose those two policies and scratch the ones that I had proposed previously there. Okay, so that's the whole summary of our discussion about climate policies. And if we could take them one by one, that would be helpful.
If I might suggest a process for this, I think if you want to make a recommendation or a motion on 4.2d here, that would be the way that we could kind of move forward with this formally.
Okay. Yeah, so I move that we adopt the phrase for 4.2.d, be guided by relevant strategies in the climate action plan to reduce the potential negative effects of climate change on doing business in the city and to attract businesses, workers, and customers in a warming climate.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the proposed 4.2d. Do we have any discussion, further discussion? Seeing, Carolyn, you want to talk more on, you
Sure.
seem to have covered the waterfront.
So the reason that I was proposing this language previously is that businesses are interested in their green bottom line. Workers want to work in a place that they can feel a little more cheerful about when they go out on their lunches, and that that heat island effect is being mitigated. It's more comfortable, and customers, in a place that's just a lot of concrete, gets real hot and they can be affected. So I think there's some economic benefit to implementing our climate action plan. So that's something that the climate action plan didn't really say. And so this is why we felt we should say it here.
Angie,
I think I need some clarification, and I might need Adam to help me. It looks to me like there's a motion on the table discussing 4.2D, but when I look back at the matrix of the parking lot items and the document, I have goal 4, I have two 4.2s.
Mhm.
And so I actually, before I think I can vote on 4.2D, I need to know which 4.2 we're working with.
Yeah, let me take from Carolyn's document here that I had shared. Let me show you what this would look like in line with the text of the draft here. So here's that. So there are two policy 4.2s, and that's because we hadn't resolved which would go where, or what we were doing with both. So now, in line with the text, Carolyn's text would go here.
You can see that the other 4.2D, which, the third one on this document, that's the one that did not have did not correctly transcribe what I had suggested. So that could be ignored.
Can we clarify what the motion is on the table then? Because if it was the previous one that we ignored, was it already in the document and we have to do something with it, or?
No, it would essentially replace 4.2D with this text that's highlighted.
Thank you.
This is the corrected language due to just simply a transcription error made before. So this is what I had proposed previously, including the word potential. So this is what we're proposing at this point. Anyway.
Angie, the original 4.2D is above it and lined out.
I'm tracking now. Thank you.
Okay. Any further thoughts, comments? So a motion has been made and seconded to adopt the 4.2.D language on the screen that reflects the work of the committee, the small committee, and Deb, would you like to take a roll call?
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion by Boatsman. There were two individuals that spoke for the second, and I couldn't distinguish who made the second.
Patazo seconded.
Thank you. Commissioner Rashis?
Aye.
Commissioner Battazo?
Aye.
Chair Murphy?
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman?
Aye.
Chair Rigub?
Vice Chair, aye.
Vice Chair, thank you. And Commissioner Gills?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
Chair Murphy, Battazo,
Yes.
can we resolve the new 4.2 that's in the matrix before we continue to further down 4.3 and all the rest of the
I don't have a problem with that. If that's causing confusion, it's probably good to get rid of it or address it one way or the other.
I'd like to make a motion then to strike the new 4.2 in the matrix that says balance economic growth with maintaining easy access to services in small town feel. I would like to make a motion to strike that altogether.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. Moved and seconded. Chris?
Yeah, I'd like to keep it. I feel like it's an important point. I'm not sure it goes exactly here, and maybe there's someplace else to go, but I do feel like in our rush to address the business concerns, I think a lot of people on this island, people talk about the quality of life in some general sense, but I think the sense that walking around the business district and feeling like, hey, this is the town that I know is important to people, and I just don't want that completely lost sight of. So I would keep it, but I understand that others might not want to.
Carolyn?
yeah, I would like to delete this because I think that we deal very significantly with access in other policies. And I think that the phrase small town feel, I don't really know what it means. And I think it's subjective and difficult for planners to interpret. I think we are what we are, and our economic development element is a blueprint for a change. And I recommend we go with it without trying to label it in some way.
Any further comments? Okay, the motion to delete 4.2 that states balance economic growth with maintaining easy access to services and small town feel has been made to delete that and seconded. Deb, do you want to call the roll?
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Gills,
Nay.
Vice Chair Brigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
and Commissioner Boatsman.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1.
Okay, we're back to 4.3.
Okay.
We have you need a motion on those two new
Can we get the
provisions.
other document back up so we can see what we're moving for 4.3?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, can you see here? This is from your document.
Oh,
there.
okay. Thank you very much. I see. Okay. Okay. I
So we
move
need a
that
motion.
I could do that?
Okay,
Okay. I move that we adopt new 4.3A and new 4.3B, or just one at a time if you prefer, Chair.
I think these kind of go together, so let's maybe put them together for now.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Well, second.
Okay. Motion has been moved and seconded to adopt new 4.3A and 4.3B. Do we have discussion? Angie?
I can appreciate the desire to enhance the environment that retail and commercial district is in. For some reason, given that this is the economic development plan, I feel like these particular specific elements would be more appropriate somewhere else in the comprehensive plan, maybe as it relates to development and right of way. Especially since they're talking about vegetated walkways. I get the sense that this is actually addressed elsewhere, and I have some real hesitation about including it here in the economic development portion of things.
Victor?
So I think we've discussed this before, and I've raised this issue before. I'd like to hear from either the people on the subcommittee or whoever else is supporting this. Where exactly are we missing trees in our town center? If I look at the main corridor through our town center, which is 78th, there is a median that is full of trees. There are also trees on either side of the sidewalks. If we go down to 76, there are trees on the sidewalks. If we go over to the Boyd building, there are trees there. There are trees on 27th. So where is this seems to be a solution in search of a problem. Where exactly are we missing trees?
Carolyn?
You know, these are some policies that Kate drafted. I thought she would be here to be speaking to them, but I will do my best. I guess that Victor makes a point. There are already trees on many streets, and I've made the point earlier that the climate action plan does include clear policies about the city engaging in city-led tree planting and encouraging businesses to plant trees. So I'm afraid I don't have anything more specific to say there about it. Adam, I think you and Kate discussed this one a little bit back and forth in email. Did you have anything to add for 4.3A?
No, I think we had some stronger language originally, and I think then I proposed something and Kate proposed something in the middle that I was amenable to bringing before the planning commission.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an in-between
Rather than the in-between, I'm supportive of no language.
Yeah, right. Got that. So, you know, I would like to revise my motion to consider these two policies separately. I just really don't think we can do them at once. Is the second willing to go along with it that way?
Chris?
Yeah, I guess sort of along what Carolyn was just saying, I can't say that I know where trees would go. I can't say that they can't be added because I don't know. But I think, maybe it makes sense given Victor's point that if we just took, the first of the two, which is simply recognizing that we wanted, the canopy without, specifically saying to increase the canopy, that might be a way forward, which would be along the lines of just doing them separately.
Okay, so did you agree that we could consider these two?
All right, I guess I was the
separately?
second, right? Yeah, no, I think I'll let splitting them is fine.
Okay, all right. So I'm done discussing the proposal for 4.3A myself, but
Okay. Deb, would you like to call the roll?
Just to clarify, we are now splitting the motion for 4.3A and 4.3B into two separate motions?
Correct. So this vote would be to approve 4.3A.
Okay,
So this vote is not to split it. This vote is on 4.3A.
Correct.
thank you for the clarification. I have a motion by Boatsman, a second by Gales, to adopt new policy number 4.3A. Are we in agreement?
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Commissioner Gales,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Nay.
Commissioner Battazo,
Nay?
Commissioner Boatsman,
I
Vice Chair Riggum,
Hey,
and Commissioner Rashice.
Nay.
The nays have it. The motion fails.
Okay, do we have a motion for 4.3B?
I will move to adopt 4.3B with a change, if I may do that. Develop a strategy to maintain tree canopy in the town center that is compatible with redevelopment and infill development.
Is that in lieu of 4.3B as written?
I propose to adopt 4.3B with a change of one word. Is that okay? As a motion?
The proposed 4.3B as proposed in your email.
Yep.
What's highlighted on the screen right now?
Yes.
That's okay.
This is my motion, is to
Okay.
change one word in
Oh,
what
I'm
I
sorry,
sent you.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the old 4.3B
Okay.
on my screen.
Oh, I
That's-
see. I see. Okay.
Point of clarification.
Yes, go ahead.
Is the 4.3B that is currently in the document the one not highlighted below 4.3A? That's the 4.3B currently in the document.
Correct. I
And
believe. Yeah.
No, these,
Oh.
yeah, these were something I proposed a couple of months ago.
right,
So they're there. They need to be withdrawn, if we adopt something new.
So you are proposing to replace the existing 4.3B with new language.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it sounds like you are trying to change that new language. Like change a word on it. Do we even have to,
No.
do we even
No.
have to do any motions and acceptance of that language, or can she just propose the language to replace 4.3B? Because I think it's getting a little confusing.
It's her motion. She can do whatever she wants. So
I am moving to adopt this new language, and as I explained in the previous summary, the subsequent two things would be deleted. We decided we weren't proposing them. I mean, you could just vote to keep them if you wanted, but so no, I'm proposing new 4.3.B at this point.
Second.
Any discussion? Victor?
I agree with Commissioner Bottazo's earlier comments. This belongs somewhere else in the comp plan. It's not part of the economic development plan.
Carolyn, is that a new hand?
Yes, I do think this belongs in the economic development element because this is what is the title of this goal, please? If you could scroll up, please, Adam. Could we see what this is? Okay, so this business ecosystem meets the social, environmental, and economic needs of residents in the future. So I really feel that this is something that falls into the environmental needs and of the residents. So if we could scroll back down again, trees are part of the environmental needs of the residents in their neighborhoods as well as in their business area. And I think this policy, unlike the one we voted to delete, we're talking about maintaining tree canopy and remembering that as we redevelopment and we infill, that we maintain a tree canopy in the town center. And I do think that's something that we should do and is defensible.
Any further comments? Andy?
Well, I do want to recognize the point that Commissioner Boatsman is making about ensuring that we've got an environment, like quite literally the physical environment is addressing the climate that people are operating in. I do believe this actually belongs in a different development location of the comprehensive plan than in the economic development plan.
Carolyn?
May I ask what part of the plan that you feel it should be located in?
You can ask that, and I would like to get back to you, please.
Okay. There being Adam?
I'll say I think Victor articulated that we have a nice tree canopy here. And while I recognize Commissioner Bottazo's idea that maybe there's a better place in lieu of another place, since it's not in our climate action plan, I think I'm supportive of 4.3 Bravo. So I think let's put it here and we can move it around later if needed.
So just for clarity, Adam, you're saying that 4.3B as highlighted on the screen should stay here, and if we want to move it later, we can.
That's my take on it. Yeah, I like the edit of maintain that tree canopy as articulated by Commissioner Ashish.
Okay. Angie?
That wasn't articulated by me. I'm not supportive of this.
It was me.
Oh.
I think what I just want to say is in absence of having our comp plan or sections memorized, I do recommend, I do recognize, you know, we have zoning and commercial development regulations that exist elsewhere outside of the economic development plan that drive these particular actions. So when we encumber development or redevelopment on parcels, we put regulatory requirements on those development and redevelopment parcels. There's specific places where that already exists in terms of how much permeable or impermeable surface and canopy. And so, you know, that's why I'm looking at this through a particular economic development lens, which is why I'm pointing to, I do think it's important. I don't think it belongs here. So I'm not trying to dodge, where do you think we should put it? I don't have the comp plan memorized, but I'm certain that there is a development standard or section that exists elsewhere that this would serve and be a stronger component of.
Carolyn?
I just want to point out that this is not an encumbrance on businesses or developers. It's developing a strategy. It's an instruction to our city staff that there would be a strategy to maintain tree canopy, because city street trees are particularly a city responsibility. And the climate plan directs the city-led tree planting. So I don't think it's an encumbrance on business.
Okay, seeing no further hands, Deb, would you like to call the roll? The motion as presented is to adopt new 4.3.B as on the screen, which states develop a strategy to maintain tree canopy in town center that is compatible with redevelopment and infill development.
Chair Murphy,
Oh, I'm sorry. You're calling on me to vote. Okay. Nay.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Nay?
Commissioner Gills,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis,
Nay.
and Vice Chair Reagan.
Aye.
Motion fails 3-3.
So one comment I'd make on that is that if we, you know, we're as has been pointed out several times, we're going to have several more touches on this. I think the goal that is being promoted here is a good one, and we might think about where else we would put this, whether it's somewhere else in the comp plan or somewhere else, or reflected in other regulations. But I think the point here is that it's really, you know, we've got a broad statement about consistency with the cap, and that's probably a good starting point, and not be too prescriptive in this provision right now in an economic development plan. But the sentiment, the goal of preserving a, you know, the tree canopy that has been well described by Victor, but the proposal not endorsed, is really important, I think, and is worth preserving. Adam?
And yeah, apologies for creating that confusion and thank you for straightening that out, Chair Murphy.
Okay,
All
and
right.
Zach, where do we go from here?
We're moving, we're making good progress here. So there's a couple other issues that are in the parking lot. So as a reminder, at the last meeting, we created this thing called the parking lot, and its intention was to put policies there that needed more clarification once the housing element was drafted. And as I was reviewing those policies that were put in the parking lot, there were a couple of clarifications that would help make that a little bit more productive to have those policies in the parking lot. And we already addressed 4.2, so that's great. So then there were two policies that there was a proposed policy 6.3. There were two different versions of that, and then also a proposed policy 6.6. And they all address housing and the supply of affordable housing. And I'll apologize. There's a lot of text on the screen because I wanted to have all the policies here. But essentially, what I recommend in the memo is that that you could keep the proposed policy 6.6, and that really addresses kind of the question of affordability. And then, this proposed 6.3, both versions of that will have similar policies in the housing element. And so we don't necessarily need to have both. And so I proposed in the memo just rolling forward with policy 6.6.
Angie?
I have notes before today's meeting because I've thought through this. I'd like to make a motion to strike both policies 6.3 and 6.6 entirely from the second. Okay.
So as I understand, the motion is to strike both versions of both policies.
Correct.
Okay, discussion. Carolyn?
Oh, whoops, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I understand this. The motion is to strike both versions of 6.3, proposed policy 6.6, which I presume comes from Commissioner, and the staff alternative. Is that correct? That's the motion?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to digest that for just a moment, please, but I will have something to say in a moment.
Okay, Angie, you want to speak to the motion?
I do. So first I want to say I am an absolutely enormous proponent of affordable housing and a variety of housing mixes. This is very important. I'm a big proponent of it on Mercer Island. I also think housing availability and economic housing mix is important to our economic vitality. However, I don't believe, especially given where Mercer Island is right now in its first shiny economic development plan, that trying to insert housing goals into our economic development plan, I don't think it would be supportive. And so I would like to support us in having a focused plan and to really focus the housing mix and housing goals in the housing plan and keep the economic development plan streamlined and simple.
Adam?
I agree with, I fully support striking 6366. I mean, we are a suburb, we are a bedroom community. Many people by choice want to drive, want to be away from work. And yeah, let's not saddle our economic development plan with this, especially in light of all the mandates coming down from Olympia. I think that's going to have enough of an impact on our city. So yeah, I'm all for getting rid of everything here.
Chris?
I guess what got me started on this a little bit was just the goal 6. Mercer Island economy provides residents the option to both live and work on island. And, it just struck me as kind of a big omission not to deal with half of that, which is what it costs to live here. And in an environment in which, I think one thing that got a little confusing, I don't think affordable housing, as I was initially putting in the top of 3 of those, was meant to mean, within the term of art, essentially something that was more affordable, something that costs less than $4 million or whatever is going on these days. So, but I take the point that this is going to be a big part of the housing element. And, if we want to take it out, just looks like a huge sort of gaping hole within the context of goal 6, not to say something about housing here.
Carolyn?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Chris is saying there. So I wanted to ask staff, if you were trying to get us to separate considerations or wait on housing aspects of our economic development plan until the housing element is done, why did the staff propose the staff alternative? Could you help me out with that? I'm trying to understand this a little bit better.
Sure. So the first part of your question, the parking lot was something that was created by the Planning Commission at the last meeting. So it wasn't a staff recommendation that you hold deliberations on those topics until the housing element was drafted. That was a Planning Commission decision, so it wasn't our recommendation. The second part of that question, in terms of the staff alternative here, is if so the original proposed policy 6.6 is shown here. I was proposing an alternative with some more concise language that would accomplish more or less what the proposal was in 6.6. So if you want to go with this idea that's in 6.6, here's a way to do it a little bit cleaner and more consistent with the other style. It wasn't necessarily a recommendation for adopting that policy. It was and
if we have something in our EDE, when it goes out for public review, we'll get comments on the connection of housing and economic thriving. So, but if we have no policy connecting those two things, as Chris points out, it's just like housing and economic development are completely separate. So my thought is that I would take issue. I think, Adam, that we were encouraged by staff to consider housing aspects of the economic development element after the housing element had been completed. I think I have mail to that effect from staff. In any case, I would prefer to have something in our draft that connects housing and working in the community so that we can get public feedback on it, for one thing, and also because I believe they're connected. So I would disagree that we need to delete all of this, and I would probably suggest, in contrast, to amend the commission version of policy 6.6 to read, coordinate with housing element to coordinate with the housing element to I'm sorry. I'll have to take a break. I gotta think about how to say that.
Adam, Zach, I have a point to clarify with staff.
Mhm.
Right now, the version in the EDE 4th draft shows everything from 6.1 to 6.6 are all inserts. And so then the question is, if the for some reason, we end up with ties or with certain things going certain ways, what gets left in to go to the public?
So at the last meeting, I should have included this in my introduction to this topic, but at the last meeting, everything under all of the policies under goal 6 were added to the parking lot. So and any of those can stay or go depending on how the planning commission would like. Under the current motion, if 6.3 and 6.6 were struck from the draft, the other policies under goal 6 would remain in the draft to go forward to public comment. But
Okay,
yeah,
Point of clarification.
go ahead.
I believe, unless I'm looking at the wrong version, 6.1 is still in the document as written.
mhm.
So that one is still in the document under goal 6. There is no 6.2.
Yeah, I may have misspoke there.
There's 2 6.3s, a 6.4, a 6.5, and 2 6.6s.
Mm-hmm.
And the motion on the table is currently to strike all versions of 6.3 and 6.6.
Correct.
Which would currently lead 6.1, 6.4, and 6.5 under goal 6.
Correct.
Adam,
Old hand, apologies.
okay. Carolyn, have you formulated your thoughts
Okay.
on 6.6?
I'm going to try. Coordinate with the housing element to increase opportunities for employees who work in our community to have opportunities for housing in the community. That would be a proposal for policy 6.6. So it doesn't say ensure, it says try to increase opportunities.
Okay, I think the proper way to do this is to vote on the motion.
Mhm.
And then if you want to propose that as a
Okay.
replacement, then you can fine tune that in the meantime.
Agree.
Any further comments on the motion? Seeing no hands, Deb, would you like to call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion that was made by Commissioner Batazzo. I do not have who made that second.
I seconded.
Rashis?
Yep.
Thank you. To strike both versions of policy numbers 6.3 and 6.6. Commissioner Gills,
Me,
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Batazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Nay.
Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Reagan.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2.
So the question then, Carolyn, is do you want to make a motion to add something back in to draw the connection between housing and economic development?
Yes, I do. Could you get the document back up on the screen, please? Okay. I move that we include a proposed policy 6.6 as follows. Coordinate with the housing element to increase opportunities for employees to live and work in the community.
Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Discussion, Carolyn, you want to speak to your motion first?
Yeah, I do think it is important to have a connection between the economic development of our community and the desire for employees to live and work in the community. And I think it's an appropriate level of activity to increase opportunities for employees to live and work in the community. It's not ensuring it, it's just, yeah, okay, thank you. I'm done.
Adam,
I like the idea of increasing job opportunities for residents on Mercer Island, and I don't see how this differs from the current 6.1 lines 11 through 13 of the fourth draft. Like that, I can read it if necessary, if desired.
Let me share my screen. I've got it.
Okay.
So 6.1 here. And then for your reference, I typed up the proposed policy 6.6 so you could see it in line with the text.
So I would like to respond, if I may, to is that okay? My hand's up.
yeah, just a moment.
Okay.
Adam, were you finished? Okay, go ahead, Carolyn.
I think the really important thing is not including the word affordable. I mean, that's a very strict definition, and it's a really tough one to meet on Mercer Island. So I really think that we should back off from that term. But I think increasing opportunities for people to live and work here is a fairly flexible approach. And I want to clarify something based on what Adam R. said. Coordinate, I know I have proposed this, but I would probably suggest with my second that we add a word here. Coordinate with the housing element to increase housing opportunities. It wasn't meant to be job opportunities, Adam R. That's what I meant, was housing. So if Chris, you're comfortable with that, that would be what I meant.
Fine by me.
For me? It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Anyway, so I think that's quite the difference, really, Adam, between what was already stated before. Both of those phrases had the word affordable in it, and this one doesn't.
Adam?
Yeah, I think that the addition of housing helps differentiate it from my view from 6.1. So yeah, thank you. That clarifies.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I have one more thing to say.
Okay,
I do think it's important to get something in here, roughly, can be revisited after the housing element is looked at, so we can get some public input on this when it goes out. So can always be changed later, but it would be great to get the public's view on that.
I think Carolyn's last point is perhaps her strongest point in support of this. That there would be some value to have at least a placeholder here to get feedback. Much of that feedback may well be negative, but it does create the opportunity to get feedback and input to see if there's a desire to bridge that, to make that connection between housing and economic development. And especially in light of the stated goal of Goal 6, which is not, only designed to promote work from home professionals. So I think Carolyn's last point is a good one, and it would give the opportunity for there to be some input on this, and we'll probably know pretty quickly if there's any interest or in moving that concept forward. Adam.
I think you raise a good point. I plan to oppose the wording as suggested due to the increase, but I'm not opposed to saying something about coordinating with the housing element on the topic of living and working in the community.
So you're uncomfortable with the increase word, is that right? Okay.
Okay. Seeing no further hands, I assume, Carolyn, that's an old hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Deb, would you like to call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashis,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Rigga,
Nay.
Commissioner Bottazo,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
and Commissioner Gales.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay, and the final issue, I'll just stay in this document here because it's easy enough to see it here. These proposed policies 6.4 and 6.5 were placed in the parking lot, and neither of them are related to housing. And so if we hold decision on these two policies until after the housing element is drafted, we're unlikely to get additional information from that housing element that will help with the decision-making process on 6.4 and 6.5. So again, here, what I'm asking for is some more clarification as to why these two policies were placed in the parking lot. And then if they're going to stay in the parking lot, some information about what would be helpful to, if they're in there for the purpose of getting public comment, or if there's some other information that the commission needs.
Adam.
I would like to put forth a motion to strike 6.4, and if seconded, I'm happy
Second.
to speak.
Okay. It's seconded. I think you were about to say you would like to speak to the motion if it's seconded, which it was.
Sure.
Motion has been made and seconded. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, this were some interesting discussion last time. I know Commissioner Hughes provided a web blog resource. I had provided that working paper. She had provided a weblog resource, and I reviewed some of the references in that document. And that weblog is published, and some of the references are published by a, if you look at, I think I forget, there's some website where it talks about, the leaning of different resources, and I think the one that I had found was from a slightly right of center leaning one, and those resources mostly came from think tanks that were labeled as far left, very pro-labor. So irrespective of any data there, I think studying this, you could find well-respected economists that would say this is great and this is horrible. So, you know, who are we as a small city to try to study this on our own when this is a very hot topic among economists? You know, how are we going to do better? So the next thing would be, okay, we bring in a consultant, right? And then it's like, well, how do we pick the consultant? We're going to either pick a consultant that's pro or against it. So I think it's just going to foster a lot of division in our city. And then I think someone also mentioned in the last meeting, it's going to signal this is not a friendly place for business. There are only 2 cities in the state that have this, Seattle and SeaTac. And Seattle's large. They can do this. And they're also they have a reputation of doing a lot of signaling. And then the other city is SeaTac. And that came out of, I believe it was Alaska Airlines outsourcing their baggage handlers. And that is a job that cannot move. Our jobs here on Mercer Island can move. So this will not help our economic development. And as I said, I think jokingly I said last time, it probably will help our parking problem in downtown.
Chris.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I appreciate it seems like the vice chair has done some studying, but yeah, I think I'd like the study to be a little more rigorous and by you know, I don't know what somewhere in the next 10 years, I think it's an issue about economic justice. I feel like the Seattle next door has a different minimum wage. It makes me think that maybe it makes sense to have one that is also maybe consistent with Seattle, but you know, I just think I don't know the answer to it. I can see some concerns, and I guess I'm both in favor of getting public input on the idea and having a study about it somewhere along the way. It wouldn't be the first thing up on the economic plan, but I think it's something worth looking at in this day and age, something that I think we should take seriously.
Victor.
So I think Commissioner Gell said something interesting at the end there, which is this wouldn't be the first thing up on the economic development plan. I guess my question would be, who determines that? Because what I found is this comprehensive plan, the broader you make the target, the bigger the menu that you provide city staff and city government to choose from. And as a business owner, I'll tell you, I'm incredibly frustrated with our city government and our city staff and their inability to focus on the basics. Things like fix the development code, get rid of regulatory overhead. And the more we focus on these additional issues, the more the core issues for businesses don't get fixed. And so I'm unsupportive of that for that reason alone, as well as many others.
Angie.
I want to say I agree with the way Commissioner Gell's phrased the conversation about justice, about taking a look at things, about being able to study and putting out to public comment. And I struggle with this one, and I want to make sure I go on record saying this, because like I'm the first one to say people need to have living wages, and minimum wage is both hard for small business and hard for the people making minimum wage. That said, I also agree with Commissioner Rashish and the environment that we currently have, that, you know, if we're streamlining and making our regulations efficient so that some of this can work better, having plans that help focus the city is important, because this is our first plan. And because it does seem to me that we are looking to develop our economy. I'm going to use the word develop our economy, not necessarily grow. Even though growing could be described in a number of different ways, it feels early in the game to study and really even talk about, do we need a unique minimum wage to Mercer Island? So while I want to support Commissioner Hughes when she first, I think it was Hughes who actually first introduced this before, and I am on board with where we want to go with our economy so that this can be a healthy conversation. I just don't think we're ready for it in this plan, and I want to support the city in staying focused.
Carolyn,
Yeah, I think Angie makes some very good points. I also like the idea of studying it, considering it. It does seem a bit early. I do want to point out just a tiny little edit here. We do have 3 cities with the minimum wage. Tukwila has jumped on board recently, so Seattle, SeaTac, and Tukwila. But yeah, it's a difficult one for me, but I do think it's a little early. Our first economic development element, we have identified that our downtown center commercial areas are maybe not as robust as we would like them to be. I feel like maybe this is something to look at a bit later. So,
Chris,
Yeah, just quickly, I think Victor's question about, how you time these things out, I think that's in the implementation plan. And Adam can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, there's things, year 1 through 4, 5 through 6, 7 through 9. So all I meant was if we wanted this not to be year 1 through 4, but whether year, 6 or 7, that can be something we would include in the implementation plan. I just wanted to, I think I'm right. Am I right about that, Adam?
Yes, that's where the prioritization of these projects would happen, is in the implementation planning.
Adam,
I think, yeah, that's interesting. I was not aware of Tukwila. But when I think of Tukwila, also when I think of Tukwila, I think of South Center Mall. They've got a lot of dining, so that makes sense for Tukwila, but we're trying to attract dining, we're trying to attract retail. So I could see that to me that Tukwila, a lot of those jobs are also non-portable. So, but I appreciate the new info. I learned that.
Victor,
So I'm well aware that this would go into an implementation plan. The point still stands. The broader the menu and the broader the amount of things to choose from, the less likely the important things from an economic development perspective, the most important things for business get completed.
Carolyn,
yeah, given Chris's, pointing out that one can determine when this should be done, I think I'm going to reverse my previous viewpoint, and I would encourage it. The word study doesn't have to be a consultant. It doesn't have to be something elaborate. So I think at some point in our 20-year horizon, we should be studying this, just considering it. It doesn't mean it has to be adopted. So yeah, I'm for it.
okay. Deb, would you like to call the roll on this?
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion by Commissioner Reagan, seconded by Commissioner Battazo to strike policy number 6.4. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Reagan,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Nay.
Commissioner Battazo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gels,
Hey,
Commissioner Rashis,
Aye.
and Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2.
Mr. Zach, you're up.
Okay, well, the only one that's left is 6.5 here.
Oops.
Victor,
I move that we strike 6.5.
Second.
Victor, you want to speak to the motion?
Sure. So as a business owner, I think kind of as it's written, I would probably benefit from the tax incentive. We provide a living wage, we provide time off, and we provide health insurance. However, I'm actually not interested. I do that because I think it's the right thing to do, not because the city is incenting me to do it or telling me to do it. I would ask, a few questions. First and foremost, where's the money for this tax incentive coming from? We're continuously being told that the city is running out of money, and yet we want to provide tax incentives. And then I will just echo the comments that I had on 6.4. And the same comments still stand there. I think the broader the target in our comp plan, the less likely it is that the important work that actually benefits businesses will actually get done.
Carolyn,
This is extremely prescriptive, considering the very small amount of money that the city might be able to scare up for such a thing, and then to figure out who would get it and for doing what incentives. I think it just would not be workable whatsoever.
any further comments? Deb, would you call the roll, please?
The motion was made by Commissioner Rasheed and seconded by Commissioner Boatsman to strike policy number 6.5. Vice Chair Riggin,
Your mic's not on.
Aye.
Commissioner Gills,
Aye.
Commissioner Battazo,
Aye.
Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Boatsman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Rasheed.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes the proposed amendments. We've finished our review, or at least this stage of the review. Now there is I did want to point out there are some next steps with this element. So we have a public review draft now more or less together. I'm going to go through and make sure that the draft is, internally consistent and clean up those, numbering and things like that. And then we'll have this available for public comment, and posted on the city's or this project's Let's Talk page, Let's Talk Mercer Island page. So it'll be available there. We plan on holding a public workshop, probably in the late winter, to get feedback on the comprehensive plan update generally, and a specific workshop to get comments on the economic development element itself. So there will be 2 workshops there. So we can get some specific comments on this newer element of the plan. And then from there, you'll have a tune-up meeting where you can respond to the comments that we receive at the workshops and fine-tune the draft, and then you'll hold a public hearing, and then have your deliberations, and then make a recommendation to the city council. So there's several touches before you make your final recommendation. But those are the next steps for this element here. And then I turn it over to any questions.
Chris?
Yeah, I guess it wasn't clear to me that we'd ironed out every sentence that we were talking about in the narrated part. And so I assume we'll see a draft before you send anything to anybody else to make sure that's clear. And I think for one thing, Vice Chair and I worked on language in the quality of life section that I don't think it was ever really, it was sent around, but I don't think we ever really voted it in. So there's a number of things like that are floating out there. But, I think maybe the next step is for you to figure out if there's a few more questions. And I don't know if we have to have another meeting to straighten those things out, if you find some issues, or how we could handle them a little more expeditiously.
Yeah, ultimately, you can, as a body, you can decide how you would resolve those. But if there, I will send out a draft for individuals to review and make sure that you'll be able to see the review draft. And if there's something that I missed, we can absolutely get that in. And then if there's like a lingering question, we can figure out how to slot that into the schedule before we go to the workshop. So if there's something else hanging out there, let me know. And I'll, if something comes up when I'm refining or finishing the draft, I'll reach out for sure.
Any other questions on this process? Adam, thank you very much again. I think you organized the process in a way that made it go very smoothly and efficiently, and you know, maybe a few things got lost in the shuffle, but we'll get those taken care of. And want to thank everyone for a good succinct discussion of these issues tonight. And now on to other business. Is there a deputy director report?
Just a very brief one. Just a reminder that we've got a meeting coming up on November 15th, and that meeting will be solely focused on reviewing the proposed items for the docket. Been doing some work behind the scenes the last few weeks with our attorneys to outline process for reviewing that quasi-judicial item and kind of how that will slot in with our typical process for the other items. So we'll be spelling that out in the staff memo that comes out here in about 2 weeks. And we'll probably also set up a meeting with the chair and vice chair to discuss that process and make sure you guys are clear on how that's all going to run. I don't know. Maybe I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about the docket process or anything going into that meeting.
Carolyn.
Yes, I wondered if this year, when the docket items come before us, we will have staff will have previously identified whether it meets the criteria and identifies the area in the existing comp plan, for example, that supports the item in question.
Yeah, that's part of the process question that I'm working through with one of our attorneys. And I think in particular for the quasi-judicial item, the commission will need to adopt findings about each of those criteria individually. So, you know, we'll be coming up with a process to discuss, and, you know, you all will make a decision on kind of a yes or no, whether each criteria is met. And the staff report will provide some background information to support that. I think for the non-quasi-judicial items, we'll probably use a more typical, like kind of how we've traditionally done it the last couple of years, where there's not as much specific information about each criteria. We can talk about them as a group, and the commission can, you know, determine if you feel that they've been met and you would like to recommend the item for the docket or not.
Chris.
Just to clarify, November 8th, that meeting is off the table. We're not doing that.
Yeah, since we completed the work tonight, we will not need that November 8th meeting. So that placeholder can be removed. And we'll just go right to that November 15th meeting. And then the final meeting for the year is December 6th. And I think I mentioned in an email, we're working on getting a speaker from the Department of Commerce to come give us kind of a guest presentation on all of the new legislation and laws related to the housing element requirements. To kind of start, well, to get us all on the same page and just start getting geared up for when we begin to work on the housing element next year.
Carolyn.
Yeah, I think we will have a difficulty as a commission determining whether things meet the criteria, because, you know, in a meeting, that is a tall order for us to each individually decide before the meeting. And it's inefficient for 7 people to decide, try to be figuring out in advance, does this proposal meet our comp plan? What aspect of the comp plan does it meet? What aspect of the comp plan does it not meet, that it conflicts with? Does it meet our code? These are things which I don't think us 7 people should have to do. I think we should be able to come to the meeting with those docket items and be presented with staff's best estimate of whether they meet the criteria. And then let us make a decision whether we agree with that, based on whatever nuances might pertain to the particular item.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, each of the proposals from the applicant or the submitter includes their analysis. And so maybe we can look into whether we have capacity to provide, you know, whether the staff concurs with that or if we have different viewpoint.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Carolyn's, you're recognizing that in the past, many of these proposals, and in fact, some of the ones that have come around again, really don't do that analysis internally. And so that does create a challenge, you know, for us to make that analysis. But on the other hand, I don't think we, given the nature of our role and the purpose of the docketing process for the citizens, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable, you know, kind of outsourcing our decision on all the criteria to the staff. And it sounds to me as this, you know, with the number of items in the docket and the other things on everyone's plate, that might be a tall order to do that type of detailed analysis. Victor.
So one question that I have is, I believe that one of the criteria is staff capacity. So are we going to have input on an individual proposed docket item basis on whether there is staff capacity, or what the proposed impact on staff capacity would be?
I think we'll give you this from the staff's viewpoint. We can give you an idea of sort of what's the size of this proposal. Is this a small, easy lift, or is this a bigger item that's going to take a lot of staff time, a lot of commission time? We'll give you a gauge on that. And we'll also give you information about kind of what's already on the work plan with comprehensive plan update primarily and other projects that are already scheduled. So, you know, the idea will be to give you that bigger viewpoint in terms of, you know, we have X capacity, certain amount of that is already spoken for. And then we've got all these other potential ideas, and we can kind of gauge what size they are so that we know, you know, would they fit or would they not fit in the capacity that's available. And I think then there's a question about kind of the approach that the city would like to take. Some cities are very disciplined and they don't like to docket items unless there's capacity to do them in the coming year. Other cities tend to docket all the things that they think are good ideas that they'd like to get to eventually. And then sometimes that leads to a backlog that takes multiple years to get through. Sometimes even like 3 or 5 years. The downside of that is it sort of constrains future commissions, future councils to do this work that's been docketed and sort of stacks up in this backlog. So, you know, I think that's a question for you all and for the city council is how do we want to manage this work?
Adam.
Also on the topic of the resources, I'm looking at docketing criteria. And it also has that, you know, the city can provide the resources, or resources can be provided by an applicant for an amendment. How does that work?
So primarily, when someone submits a docket request, they have the choice between submitting a suggestion or submitting an application. And an application has a fee. It's around a little over $20,000 for a code amendment. And so some of the proposals that'll be coming to you were applications and they've paid that fee. And so that's the primary avenue for an applicant to provide resources.
So it's financial resources, not their time. for
Correct.
reviewing okay, understood. Thank you for the clarification.
Carolyn,
Yeah, I certainly agree. It's important that we don't outsource our decision as to whether the criteria are met. But what I was getting at was our staff, they know our comprehensive plans quite in detail. And for them to be able to tell us whether this proposal, meets it, and to identify what parts of the comprehensive plan, I think that's a staff task rather than for 7 other people to try to decide themselves. But it is really important that we do identify whether the criteria are met, because too often the commission devolves into a discussion as to whether they like the proposal or not. And that's not one of the criteria. Gee, I like that one. Oh, I don't like that one. So we have to be very careful not to do that. Also, in regards to the proponent explaining why they feel they meet the criteria, I would hope that if a proponent comes forward with a proposal and they haven't shown how they meet the criteria, that they would be rejected. So we don't have to consider proposals that don't meet the criteria, obviously don't meet it. Also, in regard to the possibility of hanging on to proposals that are considered favorable by the commission or by the council ultimately, and the concern that those might cause a backup in the future. My understanding is that the Growth Management Act allows you to drop those items subsequently. The council can decide 2 years later, hey, this is no longer a high priority for us. Let's take this off the list.
That's incorrect. If an item is docketed, it needs to go through legislative review.
Okay, well, I'll do my dig up what I'm thinking about and see, why I have that, possibly erroneous viewpoint. But thank you.
okay. Any more questions? Any planned absences for the 15th? Or beyond? Okay. There being no other business to come before the Planning Commission, the time is now 8:58 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. As a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the staff has terminated the broadcast. Good night and thank you for joining us.